Wake up, commute, work. Wake up, commute, work. Wake up, commute, work. Mosaic paints a dark picture of a monotonous life in an even more monotonous city. You've seen this archetype before. Lifeless, monochrome city streets, a human workforce treated more like cattle than people, and corporate overlords that only ever demand more to feed the capitalist machine. The powers that be only care for maximizing productivity, and anything that doesn't serve that agenda is snuffed out. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5. We're asked if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm going to tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're going through the grind in Mosaic. While this is true to a degree in all forms of media, Mosaic in particular is concerned with presenting reality less as how it is, and more how it feels. Everything in this game is finely honed toward the same razor point, and everything is exaggerated or surreal to an extreme degree. Your body is warped into an uncanny valley shape, ludicrously massive piles of bills accumulate every day, and the 6-lane highway is clogged by an endless train of identical cars. There's even a scene where, on the way to work, you sit on a literal factory conveyor belt waiting to be processed. Yeah, this game ain't subtle. But in this gray city, there are occasional small moments to take solace in, where nature or music or some other joy pokes through the cracks. And in these moments, hyperreality strikes again as a brief glimpse of the sun through a window becomes a surrealistic Zen experience. But by and large, this game is trying to sell the feeling of a monotonous, joyless existence in an equally monotonous and joyless concrete jungle, and that overwhelming feeling of miserable drudgery suffuses every aspect of it. Gameplay is purposely uninteresting. At most times, all you can do is walk in one direction, letting the city's imagery flow over you, and most of the time, the pace you move at is excruciatingly slow. You do have a mini-game for when you make it to work, but it's a simple, repetitive, and time-consuming task by design, not particularly interesting or fun. And you occasionally get a new mobile app, but each one is designed to be uninteractive. The cookie clicker is as uninteresting and basic as possible. No matter what you do, you will never get a like on the Tinder knockoff, much less someone to talk to. And anytime you try to buy stock, the market will instantly downturn, and the moment you sell, it will immediately start going back up. At literally all moments, this game is an actual chore to play, and I think that's the point. Likewise, the game seems to almost go out of its way to make its miserable world as generic and bereft of actual narrative or personality as possible. Your job is just to quote-unquote gather resources in pursuit of arbitrary milestones. The name for the company you work for is blanked out. Every other human being in the city is faceless, and even if they weren't, none of them would ever want to talk to you anyway. Most of the personality on display is in how the game handles advertising, which is to reinforce productivity and servitude to the great industrial complex along with the rest of the game, but this time with a knowing wink. Occasionally, you get visited by your fairy goldfish mother, but your banter is both sparse and more or less amounts to telling the goldfish it's annoying and it responding that it does it out of love. But here again, that's the point. I obviously can't tell you what was going on in the developers' heads when they made Mosaic, but it does feel like all of these design decisions were made consciously in order to reinforce the monotone awfulness of your character's situation. And in every case, they succeed in that goal. But it does pigeonhole Mosaic a little bit in the process. The gameplay is purposely dull, so you're not about to be having fun, and the individual details are kept purposely vague, so you're not about to get a noteworthy narrative or engaging characters. Music is sparse and often simple loops, and the visuals are far and away Mosaic's strongest point, but the aesthetic isn't enough to carry the entire game like in something like, say, Gris. Everything here is designed to do one thing: reinforce the tone, drive home the message. But the message that all this misery is in service of is a little underwhelming, and when the message is the whole point, that's a pretty damning issue. Sure, Mosaic does plenty to paint a gray world where everything is awful, life is naught but a downward spiral, and the only thing you can do in such a stringent system is try to break it. They nailed that part. And if you've been paying any attention to our media landscape in the past decade, you've probably come across something like Mosaic. And that means it's easy to pick up what the game's trying to do and relate to it, especially when it's a sometimes accurate depiction of the real world. But that instant relation is a double-edged sword, because just stating that such a world exists isn't particularly insightful all on its own, and when the game does eventually try to create some payoff, it comes in the weakest, most expected manner possible. Rise up, fight the machine, pull the plug. You've gotten the point within the first 10 minutes, and anything more is just marinating in misery for misery's sake. But assuming you do give it more than 10 minutes, what do you get out of 5 hours with Mosaic? I saw the credits in under 3, so as with the last few weeks, the answer is pretty much the full experience. Maybe you'll want to tool around with the mobile apps a little longer than I did, but there's not much to them, so you probably won't. But if my opinion wasn't already clear, I have a hard time recommending this one, even though I really wish it worked better than it did. There is only one path to success for Mosaic. There's no engaging gameplay to hide behind, no narrative to carry it, or wildly creative aesthetic to prop it up. This game goes all out on a sink-or-swim gambit that it can say something meaningful to make all its other choices worth it. And that's a fucking bold play. And so it's tragic to watch Mosaic make it like 90% of the way there, but then trip on that very last, most critical step in making it all feel like it meant something. So all the same, as much as I'd like to reward such a bold attempt, I can't recommend it. There are other equally depressing but far more entertaining options for engaging with miserable doldrums, however. For example, After Party. And if you still want to have a bad time, you can also check out last week's review for Still There. But I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.